Hello everyone, welcome to the literary and jury charge portion of the 120 class. We're going to start off with an excerpt from Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and this is on praise and blame are all the same. Here we go. Ready? One of the most unavoidable life lessons is having to deal with the disapproval of others. Praise and blame are all the same is a fancy way of saying, fancy way of reminding yourself of the old cliche that you'll never be able to please all the people all the time. Even in a landslide election victory, in which a candidate secures 55% of the vote, he or she is left with 45% of the population that wishes someone else were the winner. Pretty humbling, isn't it? Our approval rating from family, friends, and the people we work with isn't likely to be much higher. The truth is, everyone has their own set of ideas with which to evaluate life, and our ideas don't always match those of other people. For some reason, however, most of us struggle against this inevitable fact. We get angry, hurt, or otherwise frustrated when people reject our ideas, tell us no, or give us some other form of disapproval. The sooner we accept the inevitable dilemma of not being able to win the approval of everyone we meet, the easier our lives will become. When you expect to be dished out your share of disapproval instead of struggling against this fact, you'll develop a helpful perspective to assist your life journey. Rather than feeling rejected by disapproval, you can remind yourself, here it is again. That's okay. You can learn to be pleasantly surprised, even grateful, when you receive the approval you're hoping for. I find that there are many days when I experience both praise and blame. Someone will hire me to speak and someone else won't want to. One phone call delivers good news, another announces a new issue to deal with. One of my children is happy with my behavior, the other struggles against it. Someone says, "What a nice guy I am." Someone else thinks I'm selfish because I don't return his phone call. This back and forth, good and bad approval and disapproval, is a part of everyone's life. I'm the first to admit that I always prefer approval over disapproval. It feels better, and it's certainly easier to deal with. The more content I've become, however, the less I depend on it for my sense of well-being. I love that one. I think that's one of my favorites in that book. I think we all struggle with disapproval. So, all right. Some jury charge. Definition of proximate cause. Here we go. Proximate cause is sometimes defined as the direct or immediate cause of the accident. An alleged negligent act or omission is a proximate cause of an accident or injury where such act or omission is a substantial factor causing the accident. If a person has no reasonable ground to expect or anticipate that a particular act would or might result in any injury to anybody, then of course the act would not be negligent at all, and no liability could result by reason of such act or omission. But on the other hand, if the act is one which the party ought, in the exercise of ordinary care, to have anticipated, was liable to result in injury to others, then he is liable for any injury proximately resulting from it, although he could not have anticipated the particular injury which did happen. Consequences which follows in unbroken sequence without an intervening efficient cause from the original neglect or negligent act are natural and proximate, and for such consequences the original wrongdoer is responsible, even though he could not have foreseen the particular results which did follow. Now, I did read a few phrases that I know of. On the other hand is OEND, so you might want to jot that down, OEND, on the other hand. Of course, I write that as final FK, of course. Let's see. Oh, proximate cause, I write that as PROX, proximate cause. Cause of the accident, I write KAUX, cause of the accident. Again, you may have a different brief for that, but that's how I write those particular phrases. So feel free to jot that down and practice those. You get some of those legal briefs and phrases down, it really makes jury charge a lot easier. Okay, because you're going to notice over time that you're going to start hearing the same phrases over and over with legal. Okay, and it does make it a lot more easier to write. All right, so I'm going to read a little bit from The Evolution of Monstrosity, and I know I sound like a broken record, but I like to always just let you guys know that some of this is hard to take down. You know, it's disturbing, but again, if you want to work in court, you're going to have to get used to that. Okay, so I always like to warn you. You know, it is very disturbing. So, and especially because it's true cases, so it's not like this is made up. Okay, so we're on Kenneth Bianchi and Angelo Buono, the Hillside Stranglers. Okay, that's where we're at now. All right. Okay. All right, here we go. Operating as a team, these two cousins terrorized Los Angeles between October 1977 and February 1978, committing a series of murders of women. Many of the victims were dumped on the sides of the Hollywood Hills, and the media dubbed the presumed killer the Hillside Strangler. The police, however, knew because of fluids and the positions of the bodies that two individuals were killing together. They withheld this information from the press. The first victim was a black prostitute, Yolanda Washington, who walked the Sunset Boulevard area. Her naked body was found on October 18, 1977, on a hillside near the Ventura Freeway. Her murder was published in the front page of the newspaper. 15-year-old Judy Miller went missing on October 31st, 1977, in the Hollywood Boulevard area. She was a runaway, a drug user, and an occasional prostitute. Her body was found tossed in a flower bed in La Crescencia. She had traces of adhesive tape on her mouth wrists, and ankles. On November 6, 1977, the corpse of Lisa Teresa Caston was found in Glendale. Unlike the other two victims, Caston was not a runaway, drug user, or a prostitute. She was working at two jobs, as a waitress and for her father's real estate company. On November 10, 1977, the body of Jill Barcombe, 18, a convicted prostitute, was found off of Mulholland Drive. Kathleen Robertson, 17, was also part of the Hollywood Boulevard street scene, was found on November 17. Christina Reckler, 20, an art student, was found on November 20. On the same day, the police found the bodies of Sonia Johnson, 24, and Dolly Capita, 22. They were last seen at a shopping mall together. On November 23rd, Jane King, 28, a struggling actress, was found in the Los Feliz extension area. November ended with the discovery of Lauren Wagner, 18, a business school student, whose strangled corpse was found off Cliff Drive. There was little doubt that the murders were linked. Almost all the bodies were bound, gagged, and handcuffed, and tossed off the sides of roads or highways, often at hill sites above Hollywood, out of the view of any houses. The police were also worried that the killers might have been police officers or somebody very familiar with police procedures. Virtually no evidence accompanied the corpses, and they had been obviously carefully stripped to further reduce any possibility of forensic links. On December 15, 27-year-old prostitute Kimberly Martin was dispatched by her call girl agency to the Tamarind Terrace Apartments in Hollywood. She had joined the agency because she feared exposing herself on the streets with the Hillside Strangler on the loose. Her body was found on a deserted lot near Los Angeles City Hall. When the police checked the apartment she had been dispatched to, they found it vacant and broken into. The killers had placed the call from a library phone nearby and then waited for their victim in the in the apartment. The last known victim was discovered on February 17, 1978, when somebody reported seeing a car halfway down a cliff of Angeles Crest Highway. When police investigated the vehicle, they found in the trunk the body of Cindy Hudspeth, a 20-year-old student and part-time waitress. Then the murders ceased as mysteriously as they began. So we'll stop there. There's more to this, but we will stop there. And to read to you some interesting facts. And this is facts about the Earth. Okay, here we go. The Earth is estimated to be 4.5 billion years old. It travels through space at 660,000 miles per hour. The oldest rocks in the world, the so-called St. Peter and St. Paul stones in the Atlantic Ocean, are 4 billion years old. The Earth rotates on its axis more slowly in March than in September. If the Earth were compressed to a sphere with a 2-inch diameter, its surface would be as smooth as a billiard ball's. The temperature of the Earth's interior increases by 1 degree every 60 feet down. If the world were to become totally flat and the oceans distributed themselves evenly over the Earth's surface, the water would be approximately 2 miles deep at every point. Glaciers occupy 5.8 million square miles, or 10% of the world's land surface, an area as large as South America. The world is not round. It is an spheroid, flattened at the poles and bulging at the equator. Interesting. I just love this book. All right. I've got an article here. This is on You and the Wind. Okay, sometimes help comes in unexpected guise. Okay, here we go. People will tell you hang gliding is a dangerous sport, but it's not the danger you think about when you're jumping off a cliff into the wild blue. It's the sport, the unfettered thrill of circling free in space. This is the closest approach man has to pure flight. There's just you, the wing, and the wind. So danger was the furthest thing from my mind that July day when I drove to Mount Washington in upstate New York. Looking out from a ridge at the top of the mountain, I saw that flying conditions were perfect. Clear skies and a gentle northwest breeze of about 15 miles per hour. Not a soul was around. I climbed into my gear and hoisted the glider above me. I stood for a few moments in the warm sun, admiring the view of Bath Hammond's Sport Valley, the heart of the magnificent Finger Lakes region, named after the long, slender lakes that legend has it were left by God's handprint. From up in the sky, you can almost believe it. As I perched near the ridge edge, a familiar rustle of the treetops told me a thermal was drifting in. A thermal is a rising flow of warmer air formed from the sun's uneven heating of the earth. On a good flying day, you can climb the thermal updraft all the way to the cloud base. I took a few running steps and launched myself. The force was so strong it nearly tore the glider's control bar from my hands. Never before had I ascended so quickly. My altimeter read 4,200 feet above the ground, or above the mountain, before the lift ended, and I gradually began to descend. Then suddenly another powerful gust hit me, this time pushing me backward. I jockeyed the control bar to get the glider's nose down, but couldn't penetrate the blast of air. Now I was falling at an alarming rate. Trapped in an airborne riptide, I was going to crash. Then I saw him, a red-tailed hawk. He was 6 feet off my right wingtip, fighting the same gust I was. This is crazy, I thought. What is he doing? A hawk is too smart a flyer to let himself get caught in a wind like this. I looked down, 300 feet from the ground and still falling. The trees below seemed like menacing pikes. I looked at the hawk again. Suddenly he banked and flew straight downwind. Downwind. If the right air is anywhere, it's upwind. The hawk was committing suicide. 200 feet. From nowhere, the thought entered my mind. Follow the hawk. It went against everything I knew about flying. But now all my knowledge was useless. I was at the mercy of the wind. I followed the hawk. 100 feet. Suddenly the hawk gained altitude. For a split second, I seemed to be suspended, motionless in space. Then a warm surge of air started pushing the glider upward. I was stunned. Nothing I knew as a pilot could explain this phenomenon. But it was true. I was rising. I looked around, but the hawk was nowhere to be seen. He literally disappeared into thin air. After landing the glider, I sat in the grass and thought about how close I'd come to death. In my mind's eye, I kept seeing the hawk, that beautiful, unexpected creature who had illogically sailed up alongside me and led me inexplicably to safety. A few years have passed since that day on Mount Washington. I've had many ups and downs since then. Yet, if I ever feel I've lost my bearings in life, I just look up into the heavens for that hawk. He is always there, really. All right. I love that story. Great story. So that concludes our literary and jury charge for the 120 class. Have a great day.